Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And we have our draft recap show. If you want to hear the show live, we record this Tuesday around 9 on YouTube. You can check it out there. We've been also, with Spotify now, we're able to just auto-post the videos onto YouTube after, so you can get the audio directly from YouTube. And it seems like we got a pretty good response from that. So make sure that, I think by now, I have the redirects in place, so I don't think you have to update your feed or anything. But make sure that you're getting the new episodes. So hopefully if you hear this and you're searching for it, you can find it. But the football dead period is about to begin for real. We don't have like any free agency. I know some teams are still making moves. The draft, the biggest head scratcher to me was the Falcons taking Michael Penix. And it wasn't that I didn't think he was a good quarterback, because I've been on record saying that I have the best feeling of all the quarterbacks. His accuracy to me seems to be the best. And that's something that you notice with like Tom Brady and other guys, where if you have accuracy, more often than not, it works out. Compared to a guy where it's like, has all the tools, needs to work on his accuracy, that never happens, right? It's almost like the guy either has the talent and he can work on the rest. He can work on awareness, making quicker reads, things like that. Even if he doesn't have all the measurables. I mean, we've seen Penix's arm, so we know that he has a strong enough arm. The only thing that was a red flag was pretty much the injuries. But for the Falcons to go ahead and invest in Kirk Cousins, a pro-style quarterback, and I've seen people throw around the pro-style thing, and it almost seems like it lost meaning, because I saw an article where they were saying that JJ wasn't a pro-style quarterback, pro-style, and I was like, then what is he? He's the most pro-style out of any of these guys, and he's the most like Kirk Cousins. So to me, for the Falcons to say, we're going to invest in Kirk Cousins, but we want someone to learn under him, I would have took JJ and said, this is the guy that's most like you, right? That's kind of like what they did with like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. They were like, oh, Aaron Rodgers fell. He was kind of a gunslinger, and he still is kind of a gunslinger. And so they were able to say, we got a guy that fits the mold. This is what we want. And instead the Falcons were like, we wish we had an air raid QB, pretty much. Like, we really like if it was Kurt Warner, that makes sense. Right? Because that's what Penix is, kind of like the air raid guy. So if he comes in and was like learning under Kurt Warner, that would be the best situation, I think, in the league. But he's not. He's learning under Kirk Cousins. Not known for being a passing connoisseur. Right? I mean, honestly, Michael Penix, if he was going to be a quarterback, you would almost think of like Peyton Manning. That's kind of like what your hopes would be. And that you don't say Peyton Manning in the same breath as Kirk Cousins. You just don't. And so I don't understand what their process was. Like, we don't know what we're going to do. Let's just pick guys that hope make sense. You know, it was almost like the guy squinted and was like, is that a left-handed quarterback? Is that Mike Vick? Oh, bro, remember 2004 Madden? That was awesome. We should get him. That's honestly, I don't understand why else you would make that pick, because like I said, you want continuity. I've been saying that with the Steelers. Like when they bring in these random QBs, I can see Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, they play a similar style where I don't have a complaint, right? Like when they brought in Dwayne Haskins, he was more of like a statue. He was like Mason Rudolph. And I had thought they were going away from that, right? So they're like, we're going to have Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins kind of battle it out. And then they got Kenny Pickett. And I'm like, this seems to be more of the direction I would want them to go in. Like even having Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett would have been a decent match, But then see the Eagles pick him up. To me, that's not the same style. Russell Wilson isn't like a running power guy like Jalen Hurts is. So that to me, that backup situation isn't going to really work out. It's almost like when Baltimore Ravens went with Lamar Jackson, they tried to get quarterbacks that were similar, and when he got hurt, the offense didn't really miss a beat, right?
Yeah, I would say that.
Because like they went and they purposely got a guy that ran the same style as Huntley, right? So like when he was there, they didn't really fall off. And people were even talking about they should let Lamar Jackson go and just go with this guy. And I'm like, but then they have to find another guy that's like those two as like the next backup. You can't just be like, all right, we're going to do this and then see how it goes, but not have a continuation plan. And that's where I think the Baltimore Ravens and some of the teams that have been successful have kind of worked out. Even the 49ers, like when they drafted Purdy, he's kind of similar to like what Garoppolo was doing, not lighting it up, more of like a game manager type guy, and able to just spread the ball around. And it worked for him. You have to have a guy that is similar. And what the Falcons did to me was kind of just, they had a guy, they could have got JJ, like I said, that was similar to Kirk Cousins. Even if Kirk Cousins was mad, whatever, they're like, we're going to do this and kind of go. And it was so similar, in fact, that the Vikings wanted JJ as the Kirk Cousins replacement. Because they knew he could do the same exact things. They even said it a couple times in the interview. I watched like their head coach give an interview where they were like, he's the best fit. We thought we might have to move up to number 5 for him. And so like if the Falcons would have been able to steal him, I think that would have been, if I was an Atlanta fan, I think that would have made me feel better. But to just watch my team make the strangest picks, you can't be excited. I mean, you kind of like the Falcons. What do you think?
Well, my love has faded since Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are gone, so my fantasy appeal is gone.
Well, don't worry, Matt Ryan, he's back, dude. Did you see? He's in the booth on CBS. They got rid of, was it Boomer and Sims?
Yep.
2 guys that looked alike to me. I can never tell. Can never tell them apart, so that's going to be better for me. Matt Ryan has a different look to him. I can easily tell that it's Matt Ryan.
But my initial reaction was that's a real Atlanta Falcons move, because they didn't put any additional weapons for Kirk Cousins. They didn't address any of their needs. They're just kind of essentially hedging that Kirk Cousins isn't going to survive the entire season. And then the more that I let the dust settle and kind of thought about it a little bit more, in a lot of ways it made sense, because with Kirk Cousins being an older quarterback, I mean, look at how much money the Jets invested for Aaron Rodgers, and he didn't even last the first quarter before he went down with a season-ending injury. If they didn't invest in a potential upgrade at quarterback, maybe it comes back to bite him if Cousins gets hurt right away. So you take an athletic guy like Penix that if you don't have a line, if you don't have the running backs, if you don't have the other tools, I mean, Bijan Robinson had a decent run when Arthur Smith finally decided to play him. But it's like, if you're going to need an athletic quarterback if the rest of the offense doesn't have a lot of pieces around them. So, I mean, it made sense. Playing the long game, it makes sense that you're banking on Cousins being around for a couple seasons, maybe not surviving the year to hedge yourself. And if Cousins does get hurt, you have a quality backup in play with Penix.
See, that's where the Jets won. It was just bad luck. Like, they brought in Aaron Rodgers. I mentioned he was a gunslinger. That's kind of what they wanted Zach Wilson to be. And it was like, you're going to come here, you're going to learn under him. And then when he retires in a year or two, then you can have your shot again. He gets hurt. They let Zach Wilson go. And now they're kind of just like, let's see what happens. And I feel like if you're the Falcons, you can't just be like, we're going to give you $100 million. We think you're going to get hurt, though. Like, that can't be the mindset. It got to be like, we're giving you $100 million. We need to build around you to help you win. So why take a guy in the first round that's like totally different? I don't understand it. That's what I don't get.
But I think Arthur Blank's looking at some of this as he needed that splash free agency signing. He got Cousins. It generated spark and interest, jersey sales. And then by taking that quarterback, I mean, that's what we talked about last week, where you draft a quarterback in the first round, immediately you breed that false sense of hope and optimism that you can sell the franchise. So we have the next quality quarterback for however many years. They don't have to start Penix right away. They have Cousins, so that you can just sell it on, here's our project. A couple years down the line, he develops and grows in the system, and we're going to have a quality guy for the next 10, 15 years.
Selling jerseys? What are you, on the Bob Nutting MBA course? Like, what kind of mindset is that, bro? That's something that I would hear from people. Like, I joked about the Steelers signing just dudes to get jersey sales. Who cares if Penix sells a bunch of jerseys? I saw the Bears bragging about that. About how...
Well, look at the quarterbacks that were in this draft, and we went in depth last week about it, but, like, there was no one that I felt like, oh, yeah, I would bet my life that this is going to be a first-round quarterback. And what, 6, 7 went in the first round? You can't say that all of them thought, oh, this is the guy that's going to change my franchise. Go jump off a cliff.
Well, it cracked me up because there were so many. And was it Bo Nix is the last one? Because it was like JJ, they brought up his highlight of his life was like getting engaged. Meanwhile, like Bo Nix is married, probably has like 5 kids because he's like so old. And they're like, here's Bo Nix and his family. Meanwhile, JJ's like a kid. And it's like, all right, he got engaged. They're like, awesome. But I'm like, why have that highlight? And I watched what the NFL put out, and they put out one of his throws from like the TCU game. And that was like a bad game for JJ. And I thought, like, who's doing these highlights for the NFL? Call me up. I mean, JJ just had that awesome throw to Roman Wilson, in the national championship game, or in the Rose Bowl, I guess. And he had one, I don't think it was to Roman Wilson, but he had some great throws in the championship game too. It's like, use one of those guys. Like, show the guy in a highlight. And I watched some of the other highlights, and I'm like, is someone just randomly typing in highlight on YouTube and picking the first one? Because some of them, like the running back ones, I forget who was even the first running back taken. Was it the Texas guy? It was just like a regular run. And I'm like, show me something exciting. The guy had to have at least one exciting play to be the top running back taken. So I watched almost all 3 days of the draft. And I will say, I talked about the changes with like the CBS NFL guys. Whoever they had, I think it was like day 3 in the booth with Mel Kiper. I had no idea who the guys were. They didn't like have a name card, I don't think, throughout the entire day. And the one guy talked about playing at Pitt, and I'm like, I don't recognize you at all. Like, you would think you would give me a little helper of like, hey, this guy, is so-and-so. Because, like, why am I trusting them? They did bring out the national champs on stage. Was that the first time that ever happened? I don't remember seeing that. Have you?
No.
That might have been just because it was in Detroit and it happened to be Michigan national champs. But I saw a lot of people complaining about that was like free advertising. Although, is it free advertising to show Ryan Day with like Marvin Harrison Jr. looking uncomfortable? Although Nick Saban, if we're talking about dye jobs, Nick Saban, his hair dye might have been worse than Ryan Day's. Did you see his hair? The guy was gray in the 90s when he coached at Michigan State. So, like, to get a nice chestnut brown is how I would describe that hair dye that he had on there. I was just waiting for him to just start sweating and it'd be like Rudy Giuliani, where the dye is just running down his face. Because some of the guys, everyone was like, Nick Saban seems to be very very perfect for this role. And I thought he's too close to some of the guys. Like, you could personally tell that he was angry during some of the highlights, especially the Michigan ones. Like, I think it was, I don't forget who it was. I don't know if it was Roman Wilson. Like, they showed his catch against Bama, and you could just see Nick Saban, like, grit his teeth. And he like, said something like, doesn't really stand out to me. I was like, but every time he's like, yeah, we played them in the Rose Bowl. He kept saying Rose Bowl. And then there were some other SEC ones where you could just tell that anytime there was a Bama highlight, Nick Saban was just like visibly frustrated that they showed it. Like the audacity that they had to show one of their other guys like score a touchdown in his team. That I was like, give him 2 years off, guys. He just coached. He knows these guys. Like when one of the Bama guys got picked late, I thought he was going to cry on TV because he was like a son to me. And I thought, I don't need this drama. If you're going to have, I know he retired, but he's too close to some of the players. And then some of the parents and stuff that they interview, I'm like, where's the tape delay? I don't know if you listen to the broadcast. I forget who the player was, but the lady doing it was like, yeah, your son's come such a long way. And the mom was like, yeah, from Louisiana. and then the dad was like, yeah, we live in Louisiana. And I was like, oh, good God. And then she's like, let's go to commercial break. Because I'm like, yeah, she's uncomfortable there. Because obviously they didn't either hear her or they didn't know what she was trying to talk about. Because there was one family, she wanted them to do the cheer for the team. And the dad was like, I've never heard of that player. And she's like, no, it's not it's a cheer that they do for the team. And he was like, yeah, I've never heard of that. And she's like, we'll have to practice with them so they know what they're doing. I'm like, you can't just do stuff off the cuff. Because like some of these guys, they probably don't watch all the NFL games. Some of the cheers that they were doing for some of the teams, I've never heard of them. Right? I've been talking about how I watch a lot of games on mute. So like if it's not one like Who Day or like something that's been around for a while, I wouldn't know it either. I'd have been just like the dad, like, what the hell are you talking about? Get out of my face. I'm trying to watch my son up there. You know? That was more of the first day jitters. But it was a pretty good production. It seemed like the draft was going faster this year than in previous years. They were a good bit behind on replay, or on highlights, I guess. But who knows? I think it's going to be in Pittsburgh in 2 years, right?
I believe so.
Maybe we should go. Just randomly go. They had like, what, 200,000 people there? That's not that many. That's like 2 big houses, dude, side by side. So traffic can't be that bad. I know it's more than what PNC and Heinz Field can have on one day. But maybe that's something we should do. Go to the draft.
I said if it came to Pittsburgh, I'd like to go just for the experience.
Go there, and then we can do like Instagram or YouTube Shorts or whatever they are at that time if they still exist, since they're getting rid of TikTok, and we'll just hammer them out. We'll get all dressed up so they can put us on TV, and I'll say all kind of things like we'll get a "Here we go" chant going. Here we go. We could even dress up as like Steelers greats. Maybe like find some other guys to go. I'll message like Jerome Bettis, see what he's doing that day. So you want to come to the game? Oh, Tony Dungy, he's a longtime fan of the show. He doesn't hate us or anything. So maybe he'll show up, right? And then
I would say probably.
They can get us on the old TV. Like we don't know these guys. I'll dress up as like the Ultimate Warrior. Then they'll put me on TV. That's what they like. They like the showmanship, right? I'll just make a black and gold version of his outfit. Very fringy, right? Get some beers out there. I think that'd be a good time. As long as the weather's all right. Detroit looked like it was okay. They brought out Eminem. I don't think they had any other highlights. I think they only brought out Eminem and then the Michigan team. And then the other day, I think, was the International Fans Day. Which, have they done that in the past? Because I don't remember that either.
I think they did last year. But don't quote me.
They brought out like Hey, we're in Germany. We're big time Atlanta Falcons fans. I'm like, why?
Oh, so that's your first exposure to American football.
Yeah, I think that was the Falcons. They had like a huge group. They had a bunch of pictures, and I was thinking like, what would possess a bunch of people? Because it wasn't just like 5 friends. It was like a good bit of people. And I'm like, was it the Super Bowl loss that really hooked you in? When Tom Brady's coming back? Because the Patriots had a big group too. And I was like, that makes sense, right? You never watch really. You kind of follow along. I think most Americans that watch like Premier League soccer or whatever, they pick one of the top teams or like whatever team that like Mac and Ryan Reynolds own. They're like, oh, that's the shit. That's the team I'll cheer for, you know? But like, other than that, you want to watch a winner. Like if I'm going to wake up early in the morning, I'm going to cheer for a winning team. And if I have no connection, like I can't just drive to the game, or like you're not growing up and your dad's like, oh yeah, I'm a big time English Premier Soccer fan. It's like, no, you weren't, Dad. Shut up. Did they even have TV? Those games on TV when you were a kid? No. So like for the NFL now, you would think that they're going to be like big Patrick Mahomes fans and Patriot fans, pretty much. Those are like the dynasties. But to see some of the teams, like the Jets had one, and I was like, I think it was in Ireland, and I was like, go, brother. Do you pick them because they're green? Because the guy looked like he was around our age, and I was thinking, I know you didn't pick him for Johnny Unitas, buddy. I don't know. Or not Broadway Joe Namath. Like, I know you didn't pick him because that. He's way before your time. So what are we doing here? Let's get a roll going. Pick some better teams. That's what I would want. Because I was thinking, like, is there a green team? Like, the Green Bay Packers have been more successful in that dude's lifetime. But I guess the Irish don't like them. But I thought that was weird. Some of them could barely speak English. I'm assuming that they had a screening process. Because some of the groups, they had a guy that translated and did the pick. Right? Because they were like, you're not going to understand the pick. And I wonder how they prep that up, because it's not like they know who they're going to pick. So like, what if you picked a guy and he's like, how do you say this name? Like, I wonder if they had a guy up there on the stage that knew all the names and they're just like the name coach. They would almost have to, I think.
Just put an earpiece in and then it's like, just repeat after me.
You know, that reminds me. Kind
of like what they're doing with Biden right now.
Well, one of the people that was on the show was like super drunk. I forget who it was. And it reminded me when I was at one of the Michigan games, the president came out and she was sloshed. And that was her excuse, was that her earpiece had some echo. So it threw her off. And I'm like, is that why someone had to carry you, like hold your arm and like guide you out on the field? Because your earpiece was throwing you off? And I was waiting for that excuse from like the broadcast team. Like, yeah, our guy, he wasn't drunk. He was just like, you know, earpiece problems. That seems to be, you just blame it on whatever. They also had a piece that threw me off, because in the middle of the broadcast, the draft, they took a break to show a bunch of ESPN guys that died. But they didn't tell me how they died, and a lot of them were my age. So it really freaked me out, dude. I was like, I don't need to be watching this. Like, you should have a little cause of death, like motorcycle accident. Like, not just like, you know, if like a guy that's in his 30s. Like I swear to God, they had like 3 guys that were in their 30s that died. And I was like, now I'm like spooked. It's not like they put old age in there. Like, what did it? Was it like a heart attack? Something else? You know? So that kind of spooks me. Especially because what was the other guy? The NBA guy that got like Bell's palsy now? Wasn't it Embiid from like your team? Did you see that?
No.
Oh, this our feed's 100% getting deleted. But he got Bell's palsy, so he had to miss a couple games. And he said that his eye, they gave him drops because he was like all blurry on one side of his face. So I'm like,
I saw he was out. I just didn't see. I thought maybe he caught an elbow or something.
Oh no, this is something that's like, I'm surprised like younger people are dying to have more heart attacks than like random athletes, because like you know how many athletes get Bell's palsy in a year? Like none. So like, it just seems weird that there's a lot of stuff like that happens. It's kind of freaking me out, man. And that's why I'm like, you need to start putting disclaimers out there. Is it because like they just died of like some other, like what was the heart thing that was happening? Like I would like to know that, you know? Put some transparency. If you're gonna go ahead and dedicate a segment, I think for the fans, it helps with a little bit more context, right? Like give us a little bit more. Don't just say so and so died. He's 30 years old. I'm like, holy crap! How did he die? That's all I thought about. I can't give his family condolences if I have no idea. What if like he was breaking into someone's house and the guy shot him in self-defense? Right? Because what was the other one? Didn't one of the players? I don't know who was it. It was wasn't it Tank Dell from Bama? He's with the Texans now or something. He gets shot in the leg at a club there night. It's like everyone was saying like, oh, feel really bad for him. It's like, why was he at the club? I don't get it.
Why weren't you at the club?
Well, some of the guys, like, it seems like it's always the same guys putting themselves in bad situations. And I'm just wondering, like, you have so much money, you could just have people over to your house, right? I mean, the only thing that's going to happen is you start doing some training drills and you accidentally break a girl's leg, like Tyreek Hill. That's a lot better than getting shot in the leg, right?
You would think.
You would think that they would be, or at least I'm surprised that some of these guys just don't have handlers. Because I don't know if we talked about it, but Michigan's had 2 coaches. I think I don't know what happened with the Denard, but Denard Robinson, he already had issues, drunk driving. They said they found him before in a pond or something. Remember that? I don't know if we talked about it on the show. But like years ago when he was like in the NFL, they found him like drunk or something where he's like just asleep and his car's like slowly sinking in a bog. And it's like, this is a weird story, right? So then he gets hired at Michigan. He's the coach, gets a DUI. They said it was like an accident type deal. They didn't have the details, but someone was like, the details, if you got the real details, like if they ever make them public, it's really bad. I'm like, worse than the first story where he's just like in a lake, right? And they find him. Like, I don't know how you could top that. And I don't mean to laugh because it's like, get help. You are an NFL dude. You should be able to have a handler with you at all times, or at least a family member that's like, hey, you're not going out and you're not driving again. Are you insane? Like, if he's married, have his wife come on and be like, I'm going to be the DD. Right? Even if it's team activities, I think like that'd help you recruit anyway. If it's more of a family atmosphere. But that's twice Michigan had guys do that. It's like, come on, guys. How are you supposed to build and how are you supposed to be a new coach when it seems like the guys are having multiple issues? Because the one guy Michigan was interviewing, I think he coached with the Chiefs. Did we talk about this on the show? He had gotten fired or he got in trouble like when he worked with the Lions because he ended up naked at a Wendy's drive-thru. Like, how do you bounce back from that? How do you
just show up the next day like it didn't happen? Like, nah, it wasn't me.
Well, how do you
straight up deny it?
It was written in the police report. So, like, if he gets hired at Michigan, he's getting negative recruited against. Like, hey, coach, got some clothes on today. Like, I get in the NFL, you'd eventually people like the way they cycle through people. The other coaches might know, but like the players probably wouldn't be looking into your history, right? I wonder if coach got arrested. Like, we should look that up. And then they have a good laugh. But that's what I'm thinking, like, for some of these guys coming into the league, what Chris Carter said, have a fall guy, have someone to just help you out so you're not in bad situations. Not in bad situations. Bad things won't happen. Teams, players are putting a lot of money into you. And this is your way, because like we talked about the WNBA and how they're not really getting paid and most of their money is through like the sponsorships or whatever. The NFL gets also money from sponsorships. So they could very easily come out and make more money if they just stay clean. Look how many commercials Patrick Mahomes is doing. He was just at like WWE or something with Logan Paul, had fake Super Bowl rings on, let him punch a guy with them. I'm like, live your life, Patrick. Do your thing. If you want to be at WWE, that's better than the State Farm commercials, man. And I went off on too many tangents there. But what did you watch it? Do you have any thoughts on the presentation itself?
I mean, honestly, the presentation itself is, I felt like, pretty par to the course of what we're accustomed to. I mean, it's something I've always looked forward to, and I felt like the upper management of the Steelers listened to our show last week. I didn't have to just smash everything and start from square one. I was pleasingly pleased to see what they did.
I was shocked they got Roman Wilson, but I feel like he fits some of the other ways they were going with receivers, where it seemed like they were going with bigger guys and then not having them work out. And they were like, we need a slot guy, because I could very easily see him being like a Randall L type guy, maybe not as versatile like quarterbacking, but pretty smart, very fast, able to make the tough catches. At least he did at Michigan. So like having a guy like that, I think is going to kind of really help open up some of the running things by keeping the linebackers kind of at least aware when they're in zone. You know, they can't just key in on the running back, because you don't want him getting behind you. He'll just blaze right by. So I thought that was kind of a different philosophy than what they've been doing in the past. I mean, I guess that's kind of how Antonio Brown was, but they haven't drafted like a receiver with that style for a long time, I don't think. I could be wrong. But I guess going line, getting that guy from West Virginia, I think was a steal, because didn't he break his leg? I think he was a first-round pick till he broke his leg.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, well, he broke his leg, and they're like, we don't know how he's going to recover. It's like, yeah, it's better than him like tearing his ACL or something. Because like a broken leg, I feel like is going to always 100% heal, unless you're just worried about him having brittle bones or something. Because I thought they said it was a clean break, similar to like what the Michigan guy, was it Zinter? I think the Browns drafted him. He had the clean break in the Ohio State game. That seemed like it was a freak accident because he got rolled up on. So I thought both of them are probably going to be steals, because like you're looking for a guy like that was projected a lot higher, gets injured. It's not a ligament injury. It's a broken bone, which should in theory heal. And you're able to get a steal because you get a guy that's valued much higher in a lower round, similar to the Chargers got Jared Rice's son. Do you know why he fell?
Because he's not Jerry Rice.
I didn't see anything on it. Like, he seemed like he has bigger size. He had pretty good speed. And it was kind of like teams were like, nah. Like, did they not want Jerry there? Is he like known helicopter dad or something? Because I know like Harbaugh wouldn't care. He's been having how many players, former players' sons play with him at Michigan, and they seem pretty pumped that he fell to him. And I thought his haul ended up being pretty good compared to like what I thought the Chargers would do. I thought they would kind of blow it up, but he kind of just had a solid kind of draft like the Steelers, where they were like, we're going to get some line help, and then we're going to get some solid receivers. And then they drafted the other linebacker from Michigan, which of course he knows who's doing like a lot of the coaching and stuff. So like he knows who's doing most of the impact on the team. I think all the receivers he got were kind of the same though. Like bigger body, more possession type receivers. But that kind of fits his mold. So maybe it'll work out for her. I don't know. That'll be one to kind of keep an eye on.
I did think the Roman Wilson pick was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, because I thought you just got rid of Deontay Johnson, and then you draft essentially Deontay Johnson.
But Roman Wilson hasn't had any of the diva type stuff with him, right? So I don't know. He doesn't seem like he's that type of guy. So maybe personality-wise, they were just going away from that, right?
Yeah.
When did they draft? Was he a late round pick? When did they get Deontay Johnson?
No, I got to look it up.
Because I knew the last two picks were like, what, Pickens, big, and then the guy from Notre Dame was more of like the big type receiver. Deontay Johnson was older. Third round. It's funny if they both went in the third round too. Yeah, he was drafted in the 2019 draft. So it's been a while. It's almost like they've been looking for a Plexico Burress type guy. But yeah, like I said, he has been doing a lot of their... He dropped a lot of passes, though, Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
I don't think Roman Wilson dropped a lot of passes that I remember. Yeah, he was also in the third round. And they're hoping that he can be the next Hines Award. I honestly think he would be more of like an Antoine Randall L to me, though. Just a guy that's kind of out there. Although he does make some good blocks. He hit that block in the back against Bama on that Blake Corum fourth down conversion. The people were like, what's he doing? I'm like, at least he's trying to get a hit in. Right? A lot of receivers wouldn't even be doing that. They'd just be standing there. So you got to give the guy credit. But no, I always liked him. And it seemed like he was the guy on Michigan's team that was always open compared to some of the other guys. I don't remember him making as much of an impact against like Ohio State, which kind of worries me. Because the other guy, Cornelius Johnson, I think, is the guy that the Chargers got late, like in the 7th round or something. He was the guy that tore Ohio State up. And I think to me, that's kind of what you look at. I know Roman Wilson had a bunch of good plays against Bama. So maybe that will kind of erase some of my concern. But like I like to see the top guys should make top plays against like the top teams, right? And that's where I thought Roman Wilson, he had big plays against TCU, but I thought some of those were just out of desperation because Michigan was behind. And then after that, he had a big Bama game. But I don't really remember him like separating himself in other games, if I'm being honest. I know Loveland, the tight end, and Johnson, like I said, against Ohio State. And then, of course, even like Donovan Edwards. But yeah, Michigan had, 13 guys drafted? The record was 15. I think Rod Moore, which I was thinking about during the draft because he came back and tore his ACL, I believe, this year. So like I wondered like if he would have went early and Donovan Edwards would have came early like everyone thought, Michigan would have had at least a tie with Georgia. I was surprised that some of Michigan's linemen didn't get picked. But did you notice there were a lot of international picks this year? Because I think if you looked at the actual projection of like talent, Michigan had, I think, 16 guys. So it looked like they could have broke the record just going by the pure NFL or ESPN like projections tops. But there were a lot of picks from like England. Like I didn't even know they had a guy that can get picked and they just said England developmental league or something. Like what is that? I thought there was a couple guys from Canada where it was just like Canada. And I'm like, if you're good enough at Canada, isn't it like the NBA where like the guys usually come and play basketball in the United States, like in college first? And so I thought it was weird that they were just like, he plays football in Canada somewhere. Like, is he playing rugby? I don't know. But I did notice that there were a couple international picks that bumped people down the line. And then, of course, just not as many linemen, I don't think, got taken. There were a lot more receivers and quarterbacks, I think, this year. Right? Did you feel the same way?
I did, and it felt like going into it, there was a really high puff piece towards the quarterbacks.
Well, some of them didn't end up getting drafted, like Sam Hartman. Because I was saying, like, I wonder if he'll be like a late round steal. At least I think I said that. Maybe I was thinking that in my own head. Because like a lot of people were knocking him because of how he performed at Notre Dame. But then I wonder, does Notre Dame have the top talent for him to compete with. It's not like he went to a team that had 3 receivers drafted, you know?
Well, did you see where he ended up at?
No, did you?
Yeah, he went to the Commanders.
That's a disaster for him. I was surprised they didn't pick another North Carolina quarterback. They're like, we like our bust.
It's almost like a Kirk Cousins situation. They drafted a quarterback in the first round, and then they still signed another one, and they gave him like a $20,000 sign-in bonus. And
well, see, that's my thing. He's more similar to Drake May. The Patriots should have brought him in to back him up. They went with Joe Milton Jr. They drafted just 2 quarterbacks that are totally different. They're like, if this guy doesn't work, we're going to bring in the Rocket, baby. Joe Milton to just sling the ball around.
See, when you have different styles, now you can say, all right, well, plan A doesn't work, then we'll just go to plan B, and you just completely shift.
But I think to me that it's kind of like, we know we drafted you high, and we talked about how awesome you were, Drake May, but we really like Joe Milton better. We just think he's going to be a project. We don't know if he's going to work out. Because, like, I didn't think Anthony Richardson last year was going to work out from the Gators because he hit all the boxes I said that I look for. He's inaccurate. He was just big, athletic. Basically, I'm describing Joe Milton. I watched him at Michigan tear up Minnesota. I think it was the first game of the COVID year. And I thought, this guy's legit. Michigan's going to win the national championship. They never had a quarterback that looked this pro-ready. And then the next week, everyone already had him. They had the tape on him, and he was done. And then Tennessee, last year he had flashes. But it wasn't like when they had, was it Hooker? Before he got hurt, it was like they still looked like they had fallen off. And so when the Patriots got him, I was like, that's a weird mix. Like, that can't be a good confidence booster when you're like, we're also going to bring another rookie that's bigger and stronger than you. And you're like, okay, I'm going to be looking over my back. Because that's like kind of what I thought. It's like, hey, you can bring in the top guy, but we're going to bring in the physical specimen too. For like the beefcake. We're going to bring a beefcake with us. Like, is that going to make you feel good? And then kind of go from there. But I don't know. Like, yeah. There's so many kind of head scratching where it's like, why are they taking more quarterbacks? Some quarterbacks not getting picked. And you could tell that, like, some teams, it was like, once those first couple guys were taken, there's a complete fall off. And I even said that most of them were going to be probably busts from what I've seen. I was surprised that the Redskins, or the Commanders, whatever they're called now, I was surprised that they went with Daniels instead of like the Drake May, which was more of like their typical pick in the past. So maybe by getting Sam Hartman, they were like, we really wanted to pick Drake May, but that hasn't worked for us. So we'll just sign
Costanza. They're like, normally who would you pick? And they're like, oh yeah, definitely Drake May. They're like, well, then we're going to take the one that is complete opposite.
Yeah, Jay Daniels, baby. And then they're like, we can still sign Drake May just in case. And we'll sign Sam Hartman with better hair, right? Drake May with better hair, that's what we'll get as our backup. Just as a fallback, right? Because Costanza didn't have a fallback, so he couldn't go anywhere. So they learned from that episode. They're like, we'll go with the opposite and then see how it happens. But I don't know, some teams like the Cardinals, like they got Marvin Harrison Jr. and then they got like nothing else. And people were like, I'm really happy with the Cardinals draft. And I was like, this draft to me looks like nothing. Like, if I was a Cardinals fan, I wouldn't be excited at all with this. Like, do you need another top receiver? How has that worked out for you guys? Right? Cardinals have known for having Larry Fitzgerald, Hopkins, and it's like, yeah, how many times have they been winning? Like, never. Okay. Keep getting those receivers, though. It's like they looked at Kurt Warner tapes, and they were like, when we had Kurt Warner, we were close. We just needed more receivers. Not the interception that the Steelers returned for like 98 yards or whatever, 100 yards. That had nothing to do with the game. We're just
they picked up Trey Benson. They got a good running back.
I know, I saw that. And I didn't realize he was a senior already. I didn't think he was coming out yet.
Yep.
But yeah, Washington had a ton of receivers drafted. I was very surprised because I sent you the tweet, dude, where all the top playoff teams had the most guys drafted. So I was very...
Florida State was there. Should have been in.
I don't know, bro. They're the same. Georgia only had 8 guys drafted, and they boat raced them. I guess
all 10 of those guys that were in the draft did not play against Georgia, so figure that out.
That seems like a culture problem, dude.
Yeah, just like driving your car 900 mile an hour in Georgia.
Hey, Michigan doesn't have a problem with that. They have a problem with DUIs, bro. I don't care.
Yeah, because what else is there to do in the winter in Ann Arbor?
You go down to watch the NFL draft with Eminem. He was there. He was there. He came out. I saw like when the Michigan Cats came out, people were like posting like, "There's a lot of Michigan State fans there. Is the NFL so unaware?" And I'm like, "This is such a good burn," because like you could hear people yelling, "Go Green" on the broadcast. And I was like, they're so triggered right now that it doesn't even matter. I saw like Ohio State only had 4 guys drafted, and they were somehow using that to like rip Michigan. And it's like, why? Because the guys are coming back. A lot of Michigan guys got drafted like later, and some of them were like linemen that didn't get picked. Like, okay, the linemen didn't get picked. Michigan has a lot of guys coming back because that's what I was saying. Luckily, in terms of breaking the record or whatever, because remember last year Harbaugh said he thought 20 dudes from this team will get drafted. He had 13. So next year they only need 7 more. And I think they already have 6 off the top of my head that will get drafted. Most likely high. Will Johnson, cornerback. He could be an overall number 1, depending on how he performs. Because they said that Sanders still, when he got picked up by the Commanders this year, that if he was bigger, like Will Johnson size, he would have been probably a top 5 pick. So you have him, Mason Graham, I think in the early, he's a defensive tackle that blew up one of the plays against Bama in the Rose Bowl. He was a top 2, I think, is what they have him at right now. Mel Kiper's early draft. I think he's ranked number 2, which I think is kind of a shock. And then Kenneth Grant, the other D lineman. So they have 3 there, and then I think they had at least 2 on the offense. Loveland, the tight end, and Donovan Edwards. And then, I said Rod Moore, but he tore his ACL, so I don't know if he'll be coming back. That would probably be my 6 off the top of my head. Then they would just need 1 other guy to get drafted. I think Michigan very easily is going to have 20 people drafted from that championship team. I'd be shocked if they had, honestly, if they had 5 or less next year, I would be shocked. I think they're going to hit the over on the 20. Unless people get injured. Because some of the guys, like Donovan Edwards, if he would have came out, he would have been drafted. Will Johnson, the 3 on defense I mentioned, Grant, Mason Graham, and Will Johnson, they were sophomores. So they couldn't come out. Same with Loveland, I think. So I think that'll be something to keep an eye on as we go forward. Because the SEC and the Big Ten right now, I sent it to you, they're trying to get ahead of the NCAA right now. And they're working on a deal for revenue sharing. And the revenue sharing is not gonna help these smaller conferences. There were talks about the group of 5 potentially breaking away and making their own playoff, which is why I think in the pre-show we were talking about regulation or relegation. And I'm like, no fan is going to want that. Because if in college football, it's all about who has the most money. And if your team makes a jump up, they're going to be one of the ones that are going to be borderline getting cut anyway. Look at a program like Duke down here. They don't have the fan support. They don't sell out their football stadium. Even if they got picked for the higher level first, if you add in relegation, there's a good chance that they're going to be one of the ones that get cut. Them, Wake Forest. What are some other schools? Boston College. That seems to always be like semi-decent. If you put them in a Big Ten SEC power conference, they're on the chopping block. They might be able to win a couple games against other borderline teams in the ACC. They're not competing. Like, how many times have they beat Florida State? Like, probably once a decade or so. Imagine a whole conference full of those, where like we joked about like Maryland and stuff. Maryland was 2-0 against Texas a couple years ago. 2-0. That's what kind of spooked Texas to join in the SEC. They needed the extra money for these recruits, and now it's paying off. They've been riding that SEC hype to what top 3 draft class, or 4. I don't even know how many they had. I know they were tied with Michigan at the top for a while. They might have finished second. I don't know if it was them or Washington, but you got to have the money. And as a fan, like I've been saying, the thing that I like is like down here, you're going to run into people from East Carolina. They have a rivalry with NC State. NC State might not kind of think of it on that same level, but a lot of fans do care, just because like if half your neighbors are giving you a hard time if East Carolina beats NC State's most likely going to want to win that game. So there's going to be some type of regional rivalries, even if it's a smaller school versus a bigger school. And if you separate the East Carolinas from the NC States right now, and they have their own playoff, I don't think people are going to tune in. Would they make more money? Possibly. People are trying to pay billions of dollars for the NBA that no one watches. I don't get it. The same companies that are paying for the NBA overpriced are also seeing their stock prices go way down. And I'm like, yeah, because you're leaking that you're going to be paying billions of dollars to the NBA and no one's watching it. I would be selling the stock as well, right? Why would you want to invest in that? They want $2.5 billion. And now they're saying that NBC might get it to add with the Big Ten on Peacock. Which, I'll be honest, I'd rather have all the apps have all the sports, right? That gets away from cord cutting. If NBC owns every sporting broadcast, that would be better for me. Because right now you have HBO Max is showing NBA games and NHL games. That's what the Canes are on tonight. Peacock is showing Big Ten, Olympics, racing, soccer, and something else. ESPN is showing the SEC, ACC, Major League Baseball, some other stuff. Apple TV's showing Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer. So that's 4 off the top of my head right now that are 4 different streaming things that are probably each $10 or whatever just to see every sport. That's streaming only. That's not counting all the additional hoops that you have to jump through, right?
Yeah.
It sucks. I see a lot of boomers telling me that they went back to cable and they love it and they're paying like $150. I'm like, that's like triple the price of what I just explained right here on the show with streaming. You could be streaming all those for $40, buddy, or whatever, even 60 if I'm being generous. You're not paying over 150 because you're not watching all the other channels on the cable. We just don't have a sports package. That's why we talked a couple weeks ago about the networks are trying to see if you can put together a sports package. Maybe they could sell it for $40 a month, $50 a month, I bet is what they try to get it up to. Where it doesn't matter who owns the rights, NBC, ESPN, CBS, whatever, you're just paying for the one sports streaming package. They'll probably call it something stupid. Like Sports Now. Or like Sports on the Go. But that would probably be better, especially if they can get rid of blackouts. That's the only thing I care about. Get rid of blackouts because I just hate seeing them. That's why you can't watch Hurricanes hockey. What am I going to do? Cheer for the Penguins? Cheer for the Red Wings? I don't understand because people are like, oh yeah, I paid just to watch Hurricanes. And it's like, yeah, I know. You probably like them that you grew up down here. But for me, I didn't grow up down here. If I'm trying to get, if you're a young family trying to get your kids into it, and the games aren't on TV, you can take them to a game, and they're like, Dad, I want to watch it. It's like, buddy, I'm not paying for cable just so you can watch a little bit of hockey because I know you're not going to pay attention, right? Like, you're going to watch it in passing and do something else. So that's where it's like, are you going to get young fans into the league? And I almost wonder, going back to the Arizona hockey team moving to Utah, is that going to be good? I'm guessing Utah is closer to Vegas, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know where they're trying to put the team, and I don't know the distances. But like, if you're trying to build rivalries, you have to have teams that are kind of close where you can run into other fans. Because down here, it seems like everyone's a Panthers fan. And it's like, okay, other than people that are transplanted, you see a lot of Packers, Steelers, some random Cowboy stuff, and some Giants stuff down here. But most of the other people are just like, we just cheer for the Panthers. And like, there's no other rival around here for them. I'm guessing if you're on the west side of the state, where you're closer to Georgia and you're closer to Atlanta, you'd run into other fans. But if you cut that for football, for college football, you're losing all the rivals. You're going to lose them all. You're going to lose them all. I also
but I feel like some of those rivalries, they're gonna change as college football changes dynamic anyhow. Because as you have more people blending conferences and things like that, I honestly think it's going to have to shift some of those rivalries.
Yeah, I think you're still going to get some that kind of pop up that are like, what are some more recent like ones? Like the Clemson of Florida State, I would say when we were kids, like that probably didn't matter at all, right? There's more Florida and Miami and Florida State, those three. But now that Clemson starts winning a couple of championships, then they have a target on their back. And it's the same with like USC and Notre Dame. Everyone tries to make that a big rivalry. They're not competing on the top level. There's a clear line, and those schools aren't at it. Like you could say, I mean, if we're being honest, like Michigan wasn't at it until Harbaugh. So like when you're there, Brian Kelly had Notre Dame pretty close, but they were still low. I don't think Freeman's going to get them any better than what Brian Kelly had them. And Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame, USC is another one where they only had a handful of guys drafted. Lincoln Riley's bringing in top 10 classes, same as Ryan Day. If you're only having a handful of guys drafted, that's 100% coaching and development. Even Michigan's crap year 2020, I think I saw that they had 9 or 11 guys drafted. How is USC getting the overall number one and barely getting any guys drafted? Having a top recruiting class, underwhelming performance on the field, that's 100% coaching. Lincoln Riley at USC could be an like immense bust. I don't know what else to say in that. Like if in terms of like the Big Ten coming in, I see a lot of Michigan fans saying like USC, they're really scared of them. It's like, yeah, you're scared of them like the power, but if you're playing in the big house, I don't know if Michigan's going to LA for that game or not this year, but I'm like, I haven't seen anything from them on the field, especially when they lose to Utah every year, which is basically the same style that Michigan runs. USC is not going to just become tougher. They join the Big Ten. They can read the Ryan Day manifesto. But that's it. At some point, you can get all the top 10 recruiting classes or whatever. You have to develop. That's where like Florida State finally made the jump. Norvell seems like he's developing the players. Dabo Swinney developing the players. Other programs getting top recruits. A&M. Nothing. What are they doing? They get the guy from Duke. Is he going to be able to kind of develop? Or are you going to see some weird things where the recruiting drops off because of that? So over time, yeah, rivalries are going to change. Oklahoma and Texas, I guarantee that one starts to fade. I just really don't see both of them keeping their stature in whatever. I mean, heck, look at Nebraska and Iowa. That's become one of the Big Ten's bigger rivalries. And it's not because they're both good. It's because Nebraska thinks that they should be beating them, and they can't do it. So it's like they think they're above Iowa, but it's like, buddy, that's where you are right now as a program. And that's, I mean, Iowa's not like a program to slouch. I'm sure a lot of programs would love their consistency. But Nebraska's not there yet. Maybe with Matt Rule they can get there. But I think you're going to see some ebbs and flows like you're saying. Like right now, with Penn State getting out from underneath Michigan, where they've struggled, and now it seems like they're only going to have to play Ohio State maybe. Or they might not even have a crossover game. So like if Penn State's turn to jump up and get the Big Ten another national championship from a different team, if it's not happening within the next 3 years with Franklin, it's never going to happen for him. He's been there longer than Harbaugh. He hasn't had a 3-year run like Michigan had. He's always been losing to Ohio State and Michigan. Now he doesn't have that scheduling conflict. He would only have to beat one of them during the regular season, and then maybe like an Oregon and or Washington or whatever. And then again in the Big Ten championship game if they happen to be there. If you're a Penn State fan, you have to be excited about the expansion because you're not in the division anymore. You can finally not have that excuse of like, well, we beat everyone but Ohio State and Michigan. And heck, even if you lose to Ohio State, you could still make the Big Ten championship game. If Ohio State ends up losing 2 games to like an Oregon and a Michigan, you can still get ahead, right? They're taking the top 2. You could even get a rematch with Ohio State. I don't think they put any rematch rules in. That's what will happen. Penn State will finally get to that upper tier, and then they'll add Florida State in, and they'll just sink back down. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Because they'll be like, nah, not enough room at the top. Sorry, guys. And James Franklin. Do you see the joke? He was at one of his players' draft announcement parties, and they said he drove an hour and just made it in time for when the other guy was picked. But then they were saying that guy just lived around the block, and his clock management got the better of him again. So he just barely made it in time. Old James Franklin, buddy. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's it.
Who's your favorite pick in the draft? We'll wrap up with that.
My favorite pick. Ooh, that is a tough one. I would have, honestly, going with Pittsburgh's first draft pick. The lineman from Washington. Just because it seems like he's a physical player that we can use him in multiple spots to be able to take last year's pick and move him as well. Give us flexibility so that you have stability up front that they haven't had in years. And I think with the extra linemen that they drafted along the way, with the South Dakota State lineman and the center, that if they really do hit on these, not only is it going to provide stability to the line, but I think it also increases the value of the running backs, because I'm sure Najee's looking at this makeshift patchwork quilt of a line that he's had to run behind. He's like, he's been running behind top draft classes from Alabama to go to this ragtag group of linemen. It's like, why the hell did I go to the NFL for this? I had a better line in college.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I talk about with the wide receivers and quarterbacks. Like like in college, you might have guys that are way better than anyone else, and you get to college. But I guess it would be the same for running backs, where the holes aren't the same because you're used to just plowing other teams over, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why a lot of the running backs from smaller schools kind of work out, because they're used to having like almost no hole, and they have to kind of make it themselves. Like even Le'Veon Bell, like that was his thing. Is like, he's so patient, he'll just make his own hole. And maybe that's what the NFL needs. That's why a lot of the bigger guys are kind of just busts or journeymen, maybe. Unless you're big enough like Derrick Henry. But he was a late round pick too. Or maybe he was third round. I forget what they said. They put it up. Top running backs. And where they were taken. But most of them were in the late rounds. So. But that's all I have. We'll be back, like I said. We have some other stuff coming up. The NFL is kind of in a dead period. Probably be checking in on some NHL and NBA stuff and see what happens. So thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and we will see you next week.